Vancouver's emerald forests and sparkling waterfront mask a heart-rending truth thousands live without a home. As someone who's seen the toll of urban struggles, I'm haunted by the stark contrast between this city's gleaming skyline and the tents crowding its streets.
Doing down here is surviving, because that's all we can do, because there's nothing left for us.
The homelessness crisis in Vancouver, much like the struggles of the homeless in America, is a quiet tragedy fueled by crushing rents, a relentless opioid epidemic, and unforgiving weather. Join me as we delve into the causes, the human cost, especially addiction's grip and the faint hope of solutions. This is a story that demands our attention. A city's hidden heartbreak. Vancouver's homelessness crisis is a raw, aching wound in a city draped in emerald beauty. According to the 2025 point-in-time homeless count by the Homelessness Services Association of BC, a staggering 232 people are homeless across Metro Vancouver, a 9% jump from 2023. In Vancouver alone, 715 people huddle in rain-soaked tents or beneath bridges, with 48% utterly exposed to the elements. Most crushing, 71% are trapped in chronic homelessness, their lives stalled in despair for over a year. Indigenous folks, a mere fraction of the population, make up a staggering 34% of those on the streets, an injustice that cuts like a knife. Families, too, are swept into this relentless storm, their children's futures dimmed by instability. These aren't just numbers, they're the broken dreams of real people in a city of plenty. I've walked downtown Eastside, where tents choked the sidewalks, and felt the heavy toll of lives abandoned. This crisis echoes the struggles of the homeless in America, from Seattle's alleys to Ully, sprawl. Why do such vibrant cities let so many fall through? How can we pass by these tarp-covered pleas for help? Each one is a testament to resilience amid ruin, a call to our shared humanity. As someone haunted by their faces, I can't look away. What's driving this unyielding tragedy? Let's uncover the forces tearing lives apart next. The roots of ruin. This crisis in Vancouver is no accident. It's a brutal collision of greed, heartbreak, and broken systems. The cost of living is a ruthless beast. Homes average over $1 million CAD, and a one-bedroom apartment demands a soul-crushing $2,000 to $3,000 a month. For too many, that's a wall too high to scale. Worse, 35% of the homeless say they lost their homes because they couldn't keep up with the bills, a stark betrayal in a city swimming in wealth.
I was living over at the Shaughnessy Village for 3.5 years, but they kept jacking the rent up. It was on 6-month leases. They jacked it up so high I couldn't pay it anymore. I said goodbye.
Inflation only tightens the screws, driving up food and essentials, leaving families and workers scrambling to survive. But it's not just money breaking people. Indigenous communities carry scars from a brutal history, locked out of stability by systemic neglect. Women fleeing the terror of abusive homes often trade one nightmare for the street's cruel embrace. Even those grinding away at low-wage jobs find their paychecks devoured by rent. and Vancouver's milder climate. It's a bitter irony drawing desperate folks from Canada's frozen corners only to trap them in the same economic vice. This cycle of despair echoes the pain of the homeless in America. How does a city so dazzling let so many fall? What keeps us from seeing their struggle? As someone who's walked these rain-slicked streets, I'm torn by the faces behind these truths. Addiction, a darker force waits to tighten its grip. Why do we let this go on? Let's face that shadow next. Fentanyl and the opioid crisis, a devastating amplifier of homelessness. The opioid epidemic, with fentanyl at its core, has become a devastating amplifier of Vancouver's homelessness crisis.
I wanted to myself. It was the worst experience of not having something, worst withdrawal from any drug you could ever have. Any kind of heroin or fentanyl. The methanol was the worst. I will never ever go past 60 mils again.
Between 2016 and 2024, British Columbia saw 8,506 lives lost to overdoses, with Vancouver at the heart of this catastrophe. Fentanyl, along with methamphetamine, tightens its grip on the homeless population, making up a staggering 24% of those struggling with substance abuse. Downtown Eastside, the epicenter of the crisis, is where addiction and homelessness are inextricably linked, feeding off each other in an unrelenting cycle. Addiction doesn't just shadow homelessness, it often ignites it, with fentanyl playing a central role in destroying lives. For 40% of Vancouver's homeless, substance abuse, specifically fentanyl, has stolen their jobs, homes, and futures. Michael, a former mechanic, serves as one of many tragic examples. After an injury led to his addiction to fentanyl, Michael lost everything, becoming another face of homelessness. Now, living in a rain-soaked tent, he fights to stay sober, his resolve barely hanging on. The streets where dangers lurk at every corner become a battleground where fentanyl overdoses claim lives, and chronic illnesses like hepatitis C spread due to unsafe needle use. Vancouver's harsh winters, with temperatures hovering between 0 and 8 and constant rain, make survival on the streets even more brutal, leaving individuals like Michael at risk of hypothermia. Meanwhile, summer heat waves like the scorching 40°C, the heat wave of 2021, increase the risk of dehydration and overdose. With the constant ruin of drug paraphernalia by rain, desperate users turn to unsafe alternatives, further risking their lives to fentanyl. Insight's safe injection sites and naloxone have undoubtedly saved lives, but with only 2,000 treatment beds, province-wide, and year-long wait lists, this lifeline is fragile. The cycle of addiction continues, but without bold action, can it ever be broken? Nature's cruel toll. Vancouver's climate is both a blessing and a curse for the homeless. Winters are milder than in much of Canada, with temperatures rarely dipping below 0°C, but the constant rain and high humidity create a bone-chilling environment. Imagine trying to stay warm and dry when your only shelter is a soggy tent in Crab Park. Summer brings relief with temperatures between 15°C and 25°C, but freak heat waves like the 2021 dome that pushed temps to 40°C can be deadly for those without access to shade or water. These extremes hit the homeless hardest, turning survival into a daily battle. The health toll is brutal. Cold, wet winters increase risks of hypothermia, pneumonia, and skin infections, especially for those already weakened by addiction or chronic illness. In summer, dehydration and heat stroke loom large, particularly for the elderly or those using substances. Rain-soaked belongings, from blankets to personal documents, are nearly impossible to replace, and the psychological strain of living exposed to the elements can deepen depression and isolation. Shelters offer some relief, but with only 1,000 beds available citywide, many are turned away, especially during peak winter demand. The city's extreme weather response program adds temporary beds when temperatures plummet, but it's a band-aid on a gaping wound. Climate change is making things worse, with more frequent floods and heat waves disrupting encampments and services. How can a city prepare for these growing challenges? Let's look at who's bearing the brunt. Faces of the forgotten. The homelessness crisis in Vancouver isn't just a local issue. It's a heartbreaking reality that echoes across Canada. The statistics paint a grim picture. Indigenous people, while a small fraction of the population, make up a staggering percentage of the homeless, burdened by the historical trauma of residential schools and systemic racism. Women, many of whom are fleeing domestic violence, face terrifying risks on the streets every day. People like Parissa, a homeless woman in Edmonton, know this struggle all too well. She's been sleeping outside for over 3 years, enduring the brutal cold. She told a disheartening story about being repeatedly moved by police without any offer of shelter, and she feels she won't survive another harsh winter. Her experience is a painful reminder of those who fall through the cracks, especially Indigenous women, who often bear the heaviest weight of this crisis. The struggle goes far beyond a single city or group. Seniors with meager pensions can't afford the ruthless rents, forcing them to choose between housing and food. Youth aging out of the foster care system are left without a safety net, lacking the skills or support to break free. Immigrants grapple with language barriers and low-wage jobs, teetering on the edge of destitution. And families too are being swept into this crisis, their children living in cars or tents as affordable housing vanishes. Woven through these struggles is the devastating shadow of addiction and mental health challenges, trapping many in a cycle tied to the opioid epidemic. These aren't just numbers, they're people. Parissa shivering in the cold elders, weighing rent against a meal, youth turned away from shelters. It's a gut-wrenching call to our humanity. How can we let this suffering persist? Fighting for hope. Vancouver's homelessness crisis is a towering challenge, but the city's not standing still. As someone who's seen hope flicker in dark places, I'm moved by the efforts underway, though they often feel like mending a broken dam with a bandage. The Housing First model is the city's backbone, putting roofs over heads before tackling addiction or mental health. It's a noble plan, but with 3,000 people desperate on waiting lists and too few homes being built, it's a faint light in a storm. The province's Belonging in BC plan promises thousands of new housing units and shelter beds by 2030, but time's slipping away fast. When winter's icy rains hit, the Extreme Weather Response Program opens temporary shelters offering warmth and hot meals. Yet, with only 1,000 shelter beds citywide, many are left shivering in the cold. Non-profits like Union Gospel Mission and Salvation Army are true heroes, serving coffee and blankets to weary souls at dawn. I've seen their volunteers, ordinary folks like you and me, bring hope to the hopeless. For Vancouver's 30,000-strong Vietnamese community groups like Mosaic fight to keep immigrants from falling through, connecting them to jobs and homes. Addiction's grip demands fierce action. Insight, a pioneering safe injection site, saves lives with clean needles and overdose reversing naloxone. But with just 2,000 treatment beds across British Columbia and waitlists stretching a year, help feels out of reach for many. Temporary modular housing offers a roof and whispers of a tiny home village near Crab Park. Spark hope for a bolder future. These efforts shine, but they're not enough. What would you do to bridge this gap? How can a city so vibrant do more? As someone stirred by these small victories, I'm left wanting more. What's holding us back? Let's face the barriers next. Walls blocking change. As someone who's seen cities wrestle with their deepest wounds, I'm struck by how Vancouver's efforts to help the homeless keep hitting crushing barriers. The biggest heartbreak is the dire lack of affordable housing. With 3,000 people desperate on waiting lists and only a fraction of homes being built, hope feels like a fading whisper. Worse, 630 low-rent units lifelines for the poorest have vanished to fires or neglect, a gut punch to those clinging to survival. The opioid crisis, a relentless beast, devours lives, with 8,506 overdose deaths in British Columbia since 2016. Treatment beds are scarce, and stigma locks many out of help. I've heard of folks shunning shelters, fearing judgment, or losing their few belongings, a struggle that mirrors the pain of the homeless in America from San Francisco streets to Portland's alleys. Clearing tent encampments in downtown Eastside meant to restore order often leaves people scattered with nowhere to go, a cruel twist that sparks outrage. Climate change piles on misery, with fiercer floods and heat waves tearing apart fragile encampments and overwhelming services. Vulnerable groups, Indigenous families, women, youth face walls of neglect. Programs for them, like safe havens or culturally rooted housing, are stretched thin, leaving dreams unfulfilled. It's maddening to see compassion falter against systemic failures. How do we bridge this gap between heart and action? What keeps us from doing more? As someone moved by these struggles, I'm restless for change. Where does this lead Vancouver? Let's look to the future. A path forward or more pain? If we don't act decisively, Vancouver's homelessness crisis could spiral further out of control. Projections are sobering. By 2030. The number of homeless in the city could climb to 4,700, a 50% increase from today. The opioid epidemic shows no signs of slowing, with estimates suggesting 10,000 overdose deaths in British Columbia by the decade's end if trends continue. The loss of temporary housing units and SROs will only deepen the crisis, leaving more people exposed to Vancouver's unforgiving weather, wet winters, and scorching summer heat waves. But I'm not one to dwell on doom and gloom without offering hope. To turn this around, Vancouver needs bold, coordinated action. First, the city must ramp up affordable housing. 2,000 Plaza new supportive units by 2030 is a start, but it's not enough. Protecting existing SROs and reinstating vacancy control could keep rents manageable. Addiction treatment needs a massive boost. $1,000 more treatment beds and shorter wait lists could save lives. Harm reduction programs like expanding safe injection sites and naloxone access are critical to keeping people alive until they're ready for recovery. Targeted support for vulnerable groups is non-negotiable. Indigenous-led housing initiatives, safe shelters for women escaping violence, and job training for youth aging out of foster care could break cycles of poverty. Climate resilience matters too. More winter shelters and weatherproof tents can protect against rain and heat. The city's Vietnamese community and other immigrant groups could play a bigger role, partnering with nonprofits to provide resources and advocacy. Collaboration is key. Government, nonprofits, and communities must work as one. The stakes are high and the clock is ticking. Can Vancouver rise to the challenge before it's too late? Let's wrap this up with some final thoughts. A call to our conscience. Vancouver's homelessness crisis is a searing mirror of struggles, worldwide, echoing the pain of the homeless in America. Sky High rents a brutal opioid epidemic and unforgiving weather batter. 232 souls in Metro Vancouver, each fighting to survive. Indigenous families, battered women, lost youth, and frail seniors deserve more than despair. Soaked tents. Addiction's relentless grip deepens their wounds, yet glimmers of hope. Housing First tireless nonprofits shine faintly. The gaps demand action, more homes, more treatment, more heart. Support Union Gospel Mission's meal programs or local shelters to make a difference. As someone stirred by their resilience, I ask, what will it take to act? The homeless in America wait too. Let's not turn away.